Good morning. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of the Oncology Advisor podcast. I'm Waqas Haque, second year HEMONC fellow, University of Chicago. Really excited to talk about ASCOmind with my two guests today, Dr. William O, who's a professor of experience treating GU cancers and also with a lot of experience in industry and different kinds of administrative roles as well. Also joined by Dr. Xiaoyan Wang, who's adjunct professor at Tulane University, who was also involved in the project. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you
Hello, good morning.
for having
Yeah.
us.
So just to get right to the bad, tell us a quick summary of the study you presented at ASCO and what was the spark of the inspiration that led you to develop ASCOmind?
Thank you so much. At ASCO this year, we presented ASCOmind, which is an AI system designed to help researchers and clinicians to really generate and realize insight from ASCO abstract and more accurately and efficiently. So that really coming from the conversation, me and my friends who is working in oncology drug development from one of the big pharma, every year during the ASCO, their team invests a huge amount of time and resources to stay on top of the really flood of new data. So they prepare months in advance, assigning teams to cover abstract and sessions and take notes, summarize key findings, and then after the meeting, spent another 2, 3 months to really digest everything, unless, at the end, they finally reach to the structured format that can really guide their drug development. So, for example, I think he mentioned, how difficult it was for him to really compare early stage trial data from, multiple competitors in terms of the cohort size, safety signals, effect size, subgroups, and all those scattered all over the place in abstract or presentations. So the information is super important for them to really designing their own trials and also making strategic decisions. So his question to me was, wouldn't that possible to have a system that really, can organize all the information in a very digestible and structured format, not months later, but sooner or even real time. So that was a spark. With the advances in current large language models, and the answer is obviously yes. So we saw the opportunity to build ASCOmind. At the same time, because we implemented last year, so agentic AI was kind of first proposed as a kind of structure to handle the working flow type of work. So that is really a very good example. ASCO was one of the best revenue to really test the agentic AI framework at the same time. So it's really coming to see the technology advancement and also the real world problem setting together. So that's how we did it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And this is my third ASCO this past year, and when you step in, there's 40,000 people. There's obviously hundreds of conferences and abstracts and presentations going on. So it can feel very overwhelming, and to have a system that can basically abstract and just quickly be able to summarize all the information is obviously great. And so you mentioned agentic AI. So maybe talk a little bit about one or two of the AI agents that were used, like Categorizer, Protocol Maker, and how the agents kind of work together for ASCOmind.
I see. So the system we designed really is we call it multi-agent framework. So we have 6 different agents trained, handling preprocessor, we calling them preprocessor, categorizer, and the data extractor and analysis and then realizer, and also the final one, which is the protocol maker or the reporting structure. So every agent, we trained them with different kind of knowledge. So using the example of categorizer, we actually fit in the NCA guidelines and the standard of care guidelines to them for them to understand how they should categorize the content of abstract, into the knowledge. So the practice oncologists or researchers would use. For example, we not just only do, breast cancer, lung cancer, but also goes deeper. So the example, the use case we used in this study was multiple myeloma. So we first categorized that into 2 structure. One is the newly diagnosed multiple myeloma. The other is a refractory relapsed multiple myeloma because, treatment will be different for those different kinds of, multiple myeloma. We'll also go deeper on treatment groups. which, for the relapsed refractory multiple myeloma, we focus on the CAR-T, the ADCs about specifics, and
Right.
then we really differentiate them differently. So also for the newly diagnosed multiple myeloma, we use renal transplantation and also the standard of care and all others. So that way we really goes to how that information link to practice.
Yeah, very nice. And Doctor, maybe a question for you next. So I read that ASCOmind is able to identify high-risk clinical populations in the abstracts. So tell us why that's important and how you're kind of able to do that.
Well, you've been going for just a few years to ASCO. I've been going for over 25. And as you know, the amount of data that is really presented there is overwhelming. Not just the number of people, but the number of abstracts and the ability to hone in on the data that you want to come back from the meeting with. And this gets to, obviously, Dr. Wang pointed out one population, pharma, who's trying to sort through both their own data,
Yeah.
which they will understand, but also the competitive landscape. This is all in an attempt to kind of understand how fast this area is moving. It's an annual meeting, but we know that things don't just happen every June. We know that they're happening continuously. So I think one of the values of a tool like this, for me as a clinician and as a researcher, is to really identify subsets, as Dr. Wang pointed out, to
Mhm.
take this complex heterogeneity of cancer, right? We know cancer is not just myeloma, it's not just prostate cancer, it's not just breast cancers, becoming increasingly subsetted into molecular and clinical characteristics. It's very, very hard for us to really put into the groups that we can take back to our patients and say, what is the best way to do this? So the question is, can agentic AI tools like this,
Mhm.
we're in the middle of this AI revolution, but how do we bring it back to a rapid understanding of actually how do we change the way we take care of patients? How do we take this information quickly? And I think that kind of high risk population subsetting is really critical because not everyone is going to need the same therapies. And being able to use these tools to get at those populations, I think, is going to be one of the fastest ways for us to take home, information that will be valuable for patient care.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I know, at least in recent years, ASCO, with everything online, you can kind of, rapidly sort through abstracts and find everything quickly. But at least I've heard that maybe back in the day, 15, 20 years ago, there used to be like an ASCO book, and then pharma industry would be, like clamoring to purchase it and, and find
Right?
everything good,
That's
right?
right.
Yeah. Okay, very, very nice. So another question is, so ASCOmind is we- based on GPT-4o from what I read. So of course, we had the release of GPT-5 a couple weeks ago, right? So we have new LLMs so popping in pretty quickly, and the demand kind of shifts from whatever was their last month to the newest thing, right? So how do you kind of measure performance, and how do you plan to improve as future iterations of LLMs emerge?
Thank you. That's a really great question. So for the study we presented, we primarily just reporting the data coming from GPT-4o, but in experiment, we also tried several other models, including commercial models and also open source models such as Llama, etc. And also both large language models and small language models. Interesting, we found that, once the agent was very well designed, the choice of large language model less, matters less than what you could think. So the agent really operate in a very similar ways across different large language models behind. For the evaluation, we rely on the manually created good standard benchmarks. So we actually published some of those benchmarks in another study called, actually another system called C trials, which is cover all the oncology trials studies across different conferences. So
Mhm.
that is the good standard we been used in this study as well. So we measure the performance of the system using very standard information retrieval metrics such as precision, which is to measure how accurate the output was, and also the recall, which measures how comprehensive the output was. You missing important information, etc. And also F1 score, which is the harmony score between the accuracy and the recall. So that is a very standard metrics we've been using evaluating the system.
Yeah,
I want
very
to
nice.
just emphasize point is so critical, right? Because the thing are concerned about is the accuracy and precision of the data we're getting from LLMs, right? We're all testing these tools, especially clinicians and researchers, to make sure that we're getting accurate information. And I think the advantage of closed systems like this is that they help to hone in on a data set that we trust,
Right.
right? And use agentic systems that kind of categorize, as I understand it, I'm not a computer scientist, but having collaborated with Dr. Wang over many years in some of our prior roles, I know the value of this is really dependent on making sure that the data set that you're using to train these models is accurate, and that the basically the output is reliable to both a researcher and a clinician. That's where I think we as oncologists have to be very careful, because if
Right.
we're using the information to make clinical decisions or research decisions, how reliable is it? And I think what you're going to see, and ASCO itself, as you know, presented a model on their guidelines
Right.
at the
Yeah.
meeting about something very similar, working with Google. That
Right.
that basically we how can we trust it? That's going to be always
Right.
the most important thing. So those kind of reliability and precision metrics are going to be very, very important to continuously report.
Yeah, I definitely agreed with that. At the same time, I do like that you all started, at least with ASCO, with one conference, at least like where the formatting requirements, at least how information is laid out, is somewhat, standard across, the different kinds of presentations, and also just starting with one disease area, then hopefully expanding in the future. What are like some, major technical or ethical challenge you faced while developing the tool?
Um, Really, technology-wise, I think it's very interesting with the current technology. It's very straightforward to generate a demo because the technology is powerful nowadays. But the real challenge really come when you want to implement it in a real-world setting. We call it the last mile problem, but it's actually a lot more than that. So for the technical standing points, two things are extremely critical. One is the domain knowledge ingestion, because we need really human oversight and expert input to really make sure the system understands the nuances of oncology. So domain expertise is the number one importance here. The second one is also the very detailed working flow the users really want to use, because you don't want to interrupt it with a huge amount of unfamiliar functionalities and to interrupt the working flow of the clinicians or researchers. So understanding very step-by-step detailed working flow is another important thing to consider in the implementation. So ethical and so generalizability, because we do want to make sure the system not works in one, just prostate cancer or multiple myeloma. It really across the all whole oncology areas, and also we also want to make sure it's explainable to
Right.
users, because we want to make sure it's kind of transparent and all that. So those are the challenges we have encountered in the development.
I'd
Yeah.
say there's even a broader question about why we even go to meetings like ASCO. Like, what's the purpose of ASCO if we can get all the information? We already know we can see it everything online. It is both an informational meeting, but it's also a social
Right.
interaction meeting. If you're young and you've just started going to ASCO, a big part of ASCO is really collaboration and interactions that go beyond the data. And think about how many protocols or how many research projects or how many insights have come from that. And, I think tools like this are intended not to replace that type of interaction, but really accelerate it. Like every time I come, and I'm sure you feel this way, you're like overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Which session do I go to? How do I know what's going to be important and is going to actually spearhead and accelerate my career and my knowledge and my research and my patient care activities? And I think that's exactly how AI in general will help oncologists be better oncologists, right? That's what we
Right.
think. But we're still in this gray zone of what tools do we use, exactly as Xiaoyan said. What is the real world way in which we use tools like this? Is it an app? Do we do it beforehand? Do we do it during the meeting? Like, what is it actually telling us that will change our interaction with the actual meeting itself?
Yeah, no, that's a great insight. And we've alluded a couple of times to researchers and oncologists using this in real world. I mean, how do you kind of imagine ASCOmind integrating into the daily workflow of a busy oncologist or clinical researcher?
Xiaoyan, how do you think this tool will best be used? Because you built it. I can give my opinion, but I'd love to hear her thoughts as well.
So when I built it, I try to really understand working flow of oncologists. That's
Yeah.
why, so in terms of the tool building, we always started to put the end users in front. So we like to have oncologists involved in the whole process of development. But I have less knowledge on how it's actually used in the real world setting. So Dr. O, I'd love to hear what you think.
Just to follow up on that, I think it's the use cases. You started with the use case of pharma.
Mm-hmm.
This meeting is obviously really important for drug development, and where the let's say four drugs in the same class. How are they comparing to each other? How do we know what the pros and cons of each of them are? How are the phase one, two, three studies going? Those kinds of insights will help the pharma use case. The clinician, many clinicians come trying to learn about where the next insights and new drugs are so that they can bring it back to their patients. And researchers, of course, researchers are going to use a tool like this very differently. I was telling Dr. Wang one of my stories about how I was doing a research project, and in order to gather the data for real world evidence for use of combination therapy in metastatic hormone sensitive prostate cancer, I sat there and I typed in the keywords, one by one.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of doctors have done this kind of research, and it was extremely inefficient. It just it's not a bad tool. It just wasn't the kind of tool that we now see LLMs are able to provide for us. And I think that's, doctors are very, very busy, right? So I was doing this as part of a research project, took me maybe a few hours rather than the few minutes that these tools may be able to allow us to do it in.
Awesome. So one last question, what can we expect to see from your team by the next time that we go to ASCO?
So interesting question, because I am do think about, right now we can digest the abstract. So I would like also to take the content from manuscripts coming from PubMed, for example, MBase, to really have the landscape mapped for researchers, not only the novel knowledge, not new data coming from a conference, but the historical data. So that is the literature. And I also hope in the future we can incorporate, data coming from CityGov clinical trial data and also the health news data, because a lot of data also coming from the reports. So we can have a kind of landscape understanding of the research field. And also practical reasons, I love to see how ASCO would think we can build this kind of tools together with the conference apps or the conference website. So when they search the sessions, and then this knowledge are automatically fits in to help them make decisions. That's what I see.
Oh, very exciting. Well, thanks so much both of your times today, Dr. O and Dr. Wang, and look forward to seeing what ASCOmind accomplishes in the future.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.